Carlos Banditos, a name that sends shivers down the spines of those who've heard it, but few know how his journey began. Carlos was born in the poor neighborhoods of Mexico City, where every morning could be your last. Growing up on these brutal streets, he quickly realized that survival depended on the ability to stay invisible. Even as a teenager, he became well known among local gangsters for his elusive nature and his ability to remain in the shadows. While others tried to attract attention, he, on the contrary, preferred to stay invisible. Carlos's life changed when he accidentally witnessed a major operation by a powerful mafia group. Instead of running away, he used this information wisely. He began offering his services while staying in the background of events. Carlos became a master of rumors and espionage, which made him an indispensable resource for members of the criminal underworld. However, his true rise began when he started working for a powerful boss who recognized Carlos's nerves of steel and sharp mind. Soon, Carlos became not only a strategist but also the executor of intricate schemes, always staying out of the spotlight of the press and authorities. This was his unique trait, the ability to remain unknown even when everything around him was in turmoil. But what happened next? How did Carlos manage to earn both respect and fear at the same time, remaining in the shadows while others fought for power and recognition? We're talking about his ability to manipulate both his enemies and allies so that no one could ever guess who was really behind all these events. A shadow in the night. What was it that made his enemies fear him? Carlos Banditos was not just another criminal player on the scene. His chilling reputation as the mafia's shadow was earned thanks to his ability to remain invisible and manipulate situations like a master puppeteer. Carlos's enemies feared him not because of his physical strength or his influence in open conflicts, but because of how he could change the outcome of a confrontation while remaining somewhere in the shadows. He understood that the most important thing was not to be seen, but to be heard at the right moment. His way of operating was extremely cautious and calculated. Carlos knew that fear is born not from threats, but from the unknown. His enemies never knew where the next blow would come from. He could arrange for a rival to disappear overnight without leaving a single trace. Serving as a mediator in disputes between mafia bosses, he always managed to come out on top. At the same time, his own name rarely surfaced anywhere. There were situations when major operations fell apart because Carlos tipped off his allies about what would happen and where. Using his network of informants, he knew every move his opponents would make in advance and could change the rules of the game at the most unexpected moment. Enemies preparing to make a decisive move would suddenly find that their plans had been uncovered and everything was going wrong. His tactic was simple: sow chaos and cover his tracks. If danger arose, Carlos never tried to eliminate it directly. Instead, he would try to redirect the blow toward his enemies. Such mastery of manipulation made him an extremely dangerous adversary, and the name the Mafia's Shadow became a symbol of his invisible cruelty and cunning. But how did he manage to remain unnoticed in a world where every step could be your last? Subsequent events only underscored his genius in the art of invisibility. Secrets behind the curtain. Invisible control. Carlos Banditos managed to rule without unnecessary noise, like an invisible conductor orchestrating chaos. His strength lay in the art of invisible control, which he had honed to perfection. Carlos used his ability to remain unnoticed to infiltrate the most powerful organizations, while still remaining a mystery even to his closest associates. He created a network of invisible threads connecting him to key figures in the criminal world. Carlos was a master of manipulation and disinformation. He knew that to know is to control. He learned to exploit his enemies' vulnerabilities, feeding them false information that led to their self-destruction. His network of informants was like a web spread out in the most unexpected places. Not a single deal, not a single crime escaped his watchful eyes. Often, even those who considered themselves Carlos's allies turned out to be mere pawns in his cunning game. One of his strategies was to sow distrust among his enemies. Using his skills in psychology, he could orchestrate events so that strong alliances would be torn apart by internal conflicts. Rumors and gossip became his weapons, and many, without even realizing it, became part of his schemes. Even when his presence was not felt, Carlos remained at the center of events, pulling the strings with utmost skill. His talent for hiding behind the curtain of events made him an invisible king. Anyone who tried to untangle the web only got caught even deeper in its sticky threads. Carlos never left direct traces, but his influence was felt everywhere. Those who tried to oppose him often faced unexpected obstacles, and in the end, their own decisions played into Carlos's hands. This was how he won the trust of some and the fear of others, skillfully playing on the contradictions and weaknesses of his opponents. His invisible control became a symbol of absolute power, built on fear and uncertainty. Only a few suspected that behind the scenes of every move was Carlos, unseen and invincible, holding the fates of many in his hands. But what happened next when his mastery of manipulation reached new heights? Will anyone be able to get behind the curtain and discover the true face of the Mafia's Shadow? A labyrinth of alliances, unbreakable ties with the Mafia. Carlos Banditos always understood that you can't get far on your own. His success depended on a complex network of alliances built on mutual benefit and distrust. That was exactly what made him so effective. Carlos developed a carefully thought-out strategy for interacting with mafia groups in order to maintain his invisible power. He was a skillful architect of relationships that seemed unbreakable. Every action he took was aimed at strengthening these ties, and they often served as a balancing act on the edge of possible defeat. Carlos understood that different groups pursued different goals, and he used this to his advantage. He skillfully played on the ambitions of mafia bosses, making sure their interests overlapped with his own. When two clans were on the brink of war, Carlos acted as a mediator, offering mutually beneficial solutions and always finding a way to get his own share out of it. Without his involvement, peace would have been broken, and that made him indispensable. Carlos's connections extended not only among mafia groups, but also reached politicians, businessmen, and even law enforcement officials. He made use of informants who supplied him with crucial information, allowing him to always stay one step ahead. These people had no idea they were working for Carlos, carrying out orders under the pretense of serving other interests. He was so skilled at manipulating his connections that everyone felt like an important part of the machine, when in reality they were just a cog in his grand scheme. Carlos was not just a middleman, he was a puppeteer who knew how to control those around him for his own benefit. Even if his opponents tried to break his connections, Carlos always found a way to restore them or create new ones, all while remaining in the shadows. His allies were convinced they were playing by their own rules, when in fact they were following a script written by Carlos. But how long could this game go on, when even his closest partners had no idea that Carlos was actually the one pulling all the strings in this labyrinth of complex relationships? A fine line, the art of avoiding danger. Carlos Banditos had a unique talent for vanishing from sight, leaving behind only rumors and speculation. He knew that in the world of crime, only those who remain invisible at every twist of fate survive. Even in the most tense moments, Carlos kept his composure and could avoid danger like no one else. He never made hasty decisions. Every move was carefully thought out and weighed. His main trait was the ability not to be where he was expected. Carlos knew perfectly well that his name had already become a symbol of fear, and he used that to his advantage. Instead of confronting his enemies face to face, he preferred to move like a shadow, leaving only hints of his presence. If his enemies tried to set up an ambush, Carlos already knew about it and changed his routes, always staying several steps ahead. His strategies for avoiding danger were simple and effective. Carlos always had a backup plan and several escape routes. He could use disinformation to confuse his enemies and would strike only when he was sure of his own safety. This approach allowed him to stay out of reach and continue his activities without interference. One of his favorite tactics was to disappear for a while, letting his enemies think they had gained the upper hand. Then he would reappear, but in a different role, with new allies and under a new name. This made him virtually uncatchable and added a mystical aura to his persona. Rumors of his death or arrest only enhanced his reputation as a master of disappearance. Even when pursuit seemed inevitable, Carlos knew how to stay safe. He never left behind any traces that could lead back to him, and always kept fake documents and money at hand. His skill at staying on the edge without crossing it was both admired and feared, giving the Mafia's shadow legendary status in the criminal world. Who could have guessed that even the invisible thread of fate tied to Carlos could be so delicately woven? Secret moves, invisible operations. In a world full of loud clashes and bloody reprisals, Carlos Banditos knew how to act differently. He understood that sometimes strength lies not in the number of people or weapons, but in the ability to remain invisible. His operations were always aimed at destroying from within, without unnecessary noise or commotion. Carlos knew how to plant information that would lead his enemies down a false trail, while he took care of his own business elsewhere. One of his most famous invisible operations involved infiltrating his rival's secret network and uncovering all of his plans. Using a network of informants, Carlos obtained documents revealing supply routes and smuggling schemes. This allowed him to set up an ambush in advance and eliminate the threat without leaving a single witness. The only thing his enemies could do was wonder how it had happened. Carlos was a master at constructing complex scenarios. For example, he could start a rumor about a non-existent deal that would attract everyone's attention. While his enemies rushed to the meeting, Carlos could calmly carry out his tasks, staying out of sight. Even when they could have caught him, Carlos always had a few tricks up his sleeve, whether it was bribery, false testimony, or disinformation. Any interference looked like a coincidence. But perhaps Carlos's most brilliant operation was his ability to use his enemies as executors of his own plans. He could create situations where competitors would destroy their own allies, believing them to be traitors. This art of manipulation made Carlos a true legend in the mafia world, even though no one had ever seen his face. With every move, the mafia's shadow cemented its status as the greatest master of invisibility and remained elusive to anyone who tried to uncover its secrets. But could this game go on forever when the lives and futures of so many people were at stake? Influence in the shadows, how he changed the course of events. In the criminal world, where every step could be your last, Carlos Banditos developed unique methods of influencing events while remaining unseen. His secret lay in his ability to control the course of confrontations and events without drawing attention or leaving any traces. Carlos used his network of informants to obtain precise information about the plans of both his rivals and allies. This allowed him to assess situations in advance and make flawless decisions, always staying one step ahead. One of Carlos's most remarkable actions was his intervention in the affairs of a major mafia family that had clashed with rivals over control of territory. Using a clever trap, he managed to feed them false information about an impending attack, which led them to place all the blame on their own allies. In this way, Carlos destroyed an alliance that had seemed unbreakable in a very short time. No one suspected that the mafia's shadow was behind this unexpected turn of events. Carlos acted like an invisible conductor, orchestrating events so that everything went according to his plan. Even when his rivals set up an ambush for him, Carlos already knew about it thanks to advance warnings and changed his plans, leaving them with nothing. Every move he made was calculated and invisible, as if he were a ghost moving through the shadows of the night. He used covert tactics to make his opponents commit mistakes that ended up costing them dearly. If Carlos saw that the situation was getting out of control, he would instantly switch to Plan B or even Plan C. This allowed him to remain an invisible master of his craft, even under the most difficult circumstances. Carlos's genius lay in the fact that even in chaos, he knew how to remain unseen, influencing everyone and everything without leaving a single clue for his enemies. His influence extended to many aspects of the criminal world, but no one was ever able to prove his involvement. This made him not only the most dangerous, but also the most elusive figure, which only strengthened his legend. But can the mafia's shadow continue to stay on the sidelines, manipulating events to his advantage? Behind the scenes of power, the unknown empire. In the shadows of organized crime, where every moment could be your last, Carlos Banditos built his own empire, which remained a mystery to everyone. This invisible empire stretched far beyond the bounds of the ordinary mafia. Carlos used his talents to create a network of influence that permeated the entire structure of the criminal world. He knew how to manipulate important connections, remaining invisible to anyone who tried to find him. Carlos's empire didn't just exist, it influenced the economy, politics, and even the cultural aspects of society. He was skilled at quietly infiltrating high offices, dictating his own terms and orchestrating games that no one even suspected. His connections with influential politicians and businessmen remained hidden from outsiders, since the names of these people could not be associated with the criminal element. Carlos knew what it meant to be elusive, and he used his knowledge about his allies to control them. He placed his people in key structures, giving them specific tasks that at first glance seemed trivial. But in the end, these tasks allowed Carlos to control entire sectors of the market. His invisible management turned enemies into pawns, playing by his rules without even realizing it. He understood the importance of information warfare and knew how to use data to his advantage. Every move he made was calculated down to the last detail, and even in the most tense situations, he remained out of reach. Carlos was able to disguise his actions so well that no one could connect him to the events taking place. His influence was like a ghost gliding through the labyrinths of power but never revealing its presence. The empire of Carlos Banditos was built on the principles of invisibility and manipulation. He remained invisible not only to his enemies but also to his allies, maintaining the illusion of safety. However, in a world where every action has consequences, can Carlos remain elusive forever, or will the curtain one day be drawn back, revealing the true face of the mafia's shadow? The final trace? A mysterious disappearance. Carlos Banditos vanished as mysteriously as he lived, leaving behind only speculation and unanswered questions. No one was able to determine exactly when or under what circumstances the mafia's shadow became invisible to everyone who knew him. This disappearance became surrounded by countless rumors and theories. Some claimed he had assumed a new identity and was living on the other side of the world, while others believed he had been eliminated by his own allies who feared his power. His disappearance was so meticulously planned that even his closest associates were left bewildered, unsure whether to rejoice or regret the loss of contact with the one who had kept them under his invisible control for so long. Carlos managed to leave behind a network of trusted individuals who continued to support his cause, following precise instructions that seemed to have been left just a day before his disappearance. He knew that his world could collapse at any moment, so he had prepared a series of backup plans in advance to make his disappearance look like yet another cunning operation. Some claimed that Carlos had staged his own disappearance, setting a trap for his enemies who thought they had finally found him. At the very moment they tried to catch him red-handed, there was no trace of Carlos left. Perhaps that was his final trick, a masterful performance that allowed him to vanish without a trace, leaving everyone bewildered. The legend of Carlos Banditos lives on to this day. Many say that he is still alive and keeps his finger on the pulse of the criminal world, but now under a different identity. His disappearance became the culmination of his ability to remain invisible and elusive. Even if he is no longer physically present, Carlos remains a symbol of the invisible power and control he built over the years, leaving others to try to unravel his complex and still hidden game. The legend continues. The legacy of Carlos Banditos. The legend of Carlos Banditos did not vanish with his mysterious disappearance. Instead, it only strengthened his status in the criminal world. Even after his departure, his legacy continues to have a profound impact on the underworld. The network structures built by Carlos still operate, spreading his methods of control and manipulation. Many of his trusted associates continue to operate under his guidance, following carefully crafted instructions he left behind in case of unforeseen circumstances. Many young crime bosses aspire to emulate Carlos, using his tactics of invisibility and manipulation as the foundation for building their own empires. Stories of his elusiveness and cunning strategies circulate among criminals like myths, inspiring a new generation of mafiosi. It is said that even in Carlos's absence, his influence is so great that conflicts continue to be resolved according to his principles, and his name has become a symbol of the art of remaining unseen and untouchable. Some believe that Carlos left behind hidden messages that could reveal his whereabouts or the continuation of his work. These rumors spark ever more attempts by followers to unravel his secrets, hoping to take control of his network of influence. However, just as during Carlos's lifetime, his curtain remains tightly drawn to all who try to lift it. The legend of Carlos Banditos grows stronger with every new rumor and story about his miraculous disappearances and the strategies he left behind. Even if he is no longer with us, his spirit and methods live on, confirming his status as the shadow of the mafia. And even though no one knows whether he will remain in the shadows forever, one thing is clear: his name has forever entered the history of the criminal world as a symbol of invisible power and elusive genius.